Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It is Christine Churchill here, and thank you so much for joining today for the Riches Are in the Niches webinar. So we are going to jump in just a moment. I am going to add a couple people as co-hosts so that they can join in the conversation. But one of the things that I want to make sure that you guys know that we can do is throughout this process, I would like anyone to add to the chat or raise your hand if you have a question or pop something in the Q&A. So I want this to be an interactive webinar. Just looking for a couple things here. And just give me one moment. Apologize for that. All right, so it looks like one of the links that we sent for our co-panelists today did not go through. So it might just be me solo, and I'm hoping that while she's on the other side of this, that she is able to chime in at some point and get the link to join us or to start posting in the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can look at some slides here about the riches are in the niches. Okay. All right, and so the reason we are doing this webinar today to talk about one of the things that a lot of us have questioned and have struggled with at our businesses is the omni-channel component of our offering. So basically, it seems like a lot of organizations are almost in panic mode about needing to be all things to all people. And so what this webinar was really designed to do is to let you guys think a little bit, or to hone in a little bit more on why that's not necessarily the case. We do not need to be all things to all people. And it's actually near impossible to do that. But the mentality at a lot of businesses is the omni-channel or bust approach. And that may not result in the actual customer experience that you are looking for. And there's a few reasons behind that we're going to cover today. Basically, the systems and the resources that are required to develop that true omni-channel experience, let alone a successful one, is something that's daunting for most organizations, if not elusive. And so there are a few things that it seems the terms multi-channel and omni-channel tend to be interchanged by most organizations. And so they think that if they're kind of everywhere, or they're communicating with their customers in all these different channels, that they're actually offering an omni-channel experience, which isn't what that is. So some of the things we're going to talk about today is what's the difference between multi-channel and omni-channel, and why we want to be really good at our offering in the channels that make the most sense to our customers versus trying to be all things to all people. Let's see. Sorry, I just had a post up here. Let's just see. Sorry about that. Okay. All right, yeah, I apologize. So here we are already starting out with some glitches. So it seems it's a little clunky in the beginning. So we're going to keep moving forward. And if you can just stick with me, that would be outstanding. All right, so here are the differences. We've got multi-channel, which means it's multiple channels of communication. So these are the various ways that you service, connect with, communicate to your customers. A lot of times sales and marketing has an approach, but there's also that service component that is key to how it is that you're reaching your customers and communicating with them on that service side. Omnichannel means an integrated and seamless approach between multiple channels of communication. So that means that something's completely integrated. They can switch from one channel to another without any glitches. Anybody who's working with the customer can see exactly what they had just done, or what avenue or what channel they had just come from, and it keeps that seamless, and it also keeps the service interaction consistent. Now, what I want you to think about as we're working through this, since we've got a lot of different industries on here, is that there are a variety of customer journeys that your customer goes through. And the thought of trying to make an omni-channel solution for each one of those customer journeys might be a little overwhelming. Some of you may actually feel heart palpitations when I say something like that, because it might be something that your organization has tasked you to do. But it's not something that you maybe feel is realistic, or that's something that from a resource perspective that you really think that you can execute in a way that actually improves the customer experience. Because I think the struggle here is that most organizations feel, okay, we need to offer this because this is what people expect. But, you know, in doing some additional research for this webinar, what I found is that customers don't actually know what omnichannel means. They just know when they're getting a good service experience. So we know some organizations do omnichannel really well. I think there are the Amazons of the world who have it they do a really good job. I mean, there's not a lot of people who can deny that or dispute that. But we can all think of an example of an organization that we've reached out to. Maybe we started with looking on their website, and we moved over to chat, and then we got connected with an agent, and it wasn't a seamless experience. It was very disjointed, or the service experience from calling to schedule an installation and actually having them here and executing that. What was promised wasn't what was delivered, but that's because they were working in silos. And so we can see a good omni-channel experience, and then we can see a disjointed one, which makes it more of a multi-channel, but also in a lot of ways a siloed experience. So we have to figure out what customer journeys that we offer are the ones, if we're going to invest in omni-channel, could potentially make the most sense, and which ones need to be, or what we need to do initially to ensure that the foundational customer service offerings that we are currently extending to our customers are done in a seamless way, meaning that that foundation is strong. So before we start building or branching, we need to make sure that what we are offering is stellar, that it is the best that it can possibly be, and that all the I's are dotted and that the T's are crossed. So hopefully this makes sense. But before I continue, I just want to check to see if anybody has any questions, comments, or concerns. And also, if there's any examples of things that expectations that you may have at your office place that you want to share, that you think are, you know, either you need to venture towards the omni-channel and you're not there yet, or you're being pushed to do that, or you're not 100% sure where it makes the most sense in your business, I'd love for you to chat that or post a question, just so it's a great talking point. Because if you have that question or you have that concern, inevitably someone else on this webinar today does as well. And I want to make sure that we're addressing each of those components. So again, I want you to just think as we're working through this, like, where are examples of omnichannel is working well, but where are some where you've experienced that they think they're giving this omnichannel experience and it's completely disjointed, and how that has actually affected your customer experience. Because for me, from my perspective and my point of view, if I have a service experience that is very good, even if my only way of accessing is through email, or maybe it's only through phone, if I can have that experience be seamless, then I'm happy. Seamless meaning I get my questions answered, that foundation is strong and good in the way that they execute and deliver it, and then my questions are answered and I get what I need. Let's see, are there some industries, so one of the questions is, some industries benefit more from omni-channel, such as retail versus benefit management? I'm not 100% sure I have the clarity on that question, but I think there are some industries that benefit from omni-channel and more than others. And I think that that really depends on your customer base and your customer segment. So we're going to jump into that next. Okay, so one of the key things that you need before you even determine, do we need to offer a better solution? Where do we need to pick up, do better in certain areas? The first one that we want to look at is customer clarity. So there's a few things you need to ask yourself about your customer in order to understand what service channels make the most sense, where you need to spend your resources, and does an omni-channel approach actually need to be where your resources are spent? Perhaps your resources really need to be spent on improved technology or customized training for your team. So these are the things that you really need to get clear on before you start looking at, oh my gosh, we need to be omni-channel. We need to be able to service all our customer journeys in this omni-channel way, because again, the ability to be able to do that is almost like it seamlessly is almost like as elusive as it's like a unicorn, right? I mean, it's we don't even know that that exists, right? I mean, if it can truly be something that they can contribute or that you could achieve. So the first one would be customer motivation. What is driving the customer to connect through the channel that they have chosen? So why are they reaching out to you through that channel? Is it because you offer the channel and that's the most convenient for them? Or is it because it's the only channel that you offer? So trying to figure out what's driving them to those specific channels. Just give me one moment, got another. Okay. All right, sorry. And then we've got, yeah, if your chat's coming in, apparently it's showing that they're coming in from the same person, even though that's not the case. So, but please continue to ask your questions and hopefully we can get that squared away. So customer motivation, also the customer desire. So what is the customer seeking from the organization or interaction? So this is one of the key things that I think is missed by a lot of companies, which is what is the customer actually reaching out to you for? It might be something easy, like they just need something fixed from you, but like, what is the solution that they are looking for beyond the question that they might be asking? So what is the desire that they're having? And so to align with that component, there's actually an article in the Harvard Business Review called, jobs, what is your customer hiring you to do, or what are the jobs to be done? So basically, we know that customers become your customer because you have a product or service they want, but the real underlying question is, why is that a product or service they want? What is that solving for them? What is that doing for them in their life? What emotion is that generating? Those are questions that are really important to answer in order to determine if you're servicing your customer the right way. The third question to ask yourself is about customer behavior. So what has the customer already been, where has the customer already been with the organization? So where have they already touched the organization through their journey? So did they start with the website? Did they start with a commercial? Did they see an advertisement in Facebook? Where did they already engage with the organization on their journey? And what led them to this particular service channel? How did they get there? Why did they get there? So again, tracking the customer journey beyond just where you're servicing them, kind of where they've started. This is all about that customer experience and understanding, is it easy for them to do business with you? And if so, why? And tracking those touch points of where they're going with your organization and where they've landed now. So really understanding that, because you're going to see that different customer segments may be following a different type of journey than another customer segment. So it might all lead to the same outcome, but potentially maybe a different demographic, a different age group is approaching that from a different angle than another one. But that particular customer journey for each of them is one of the key customer journeys that your organization has identified. And in those cases, then we are going to, in those cases, that's where you might look at that omni-channel experience of investing for that particular customer journey. So that's why customer behavior is key. All right, and then customer emotion level. Are specific channels of engagement chosen based on the emotional state of the customer? And again, this kind of comes through, it's really going to depend on your product or service, obviously, and if heightened emotional state is actually something that you experience with your consumers. And if it is, trying to determine if they're in a certain emotional state or it's a specific type of journey that regularly would have a heightened emotional state. Do they take one service channel route, for example, picking up the phone, versus a lower emotional state where they might decide to go through the website, look for frequently asked questions, try and engage with the chatbot that you might be offering. So trying to understand where they are emotionally for the various customer journeys that you have is going to help serve to determine how you want to offer, what type of service channels that you're looking to offer. So I'm going to pause here and just see if anybody has any questions or comments. And then we actually, our panelist today, who I think she's actually listening as an audience member now, because her panelist link maybe didn't work, just want to see if she had any comments on any of that. So our panelist today was meant to be Maria Martinez, and some of you may have worked with her before. She's our senior awards judge and senior licensed assessor for us as well. And I'll just keep an eye out for any chats that might come from her as well. All right, so while this may seem counter to these stats, may seem a little bit counter to what we're trying to say here, which is make sure that your service offering or your service channels that you're offering are at the best that they can be before you look at omni-channel. The point that I'm trying to make with this slide, and we'll talk about these stats in a minute, is that omni-channel is a solution that people are seeking if it's the right solution, it can be executed well. And again, that's saying that all of your customer journeys do not need to have an omni-channel solution, but that you can choose 2, maybe 3 that you would want to do that for. And the reason being is these stats that are here. So 98% of Americans switch between devices every day. And I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. Customers get irritated repeating issues to multiple customer service representatives. That is not new information because we're all customers and we all know that. Shoppers see relevance in using smartphones for research while shopping in the stores. So we all have these uber super powered computer in our hands at all time. And I think that, if any of you came from the same genre or generation that I did, that concept is incredibly foreign, that we would actually have that much power in our hand and we use it. And, considering how much I use it, I can only imagine how much more the younger generation actually uses that when they're in the stores, making their shopping decisions, checking to make sure that their peers agree that this is a good idea, this is a good purchase, what makes the most sense, what the feedback is on your organization. More customer retention rate for businesses that adopt omni-channel strategies. And we know that that's true. And again, this is, not to be all things to all people, but meeting the customer where they are. And if you have various segments going to all different channels, and it's a journey that gets them to that same outcome, those are the ones you want to be looking at to consider building an omni-channel for. And then higher lifetime value for omni-channel shoppers. All right. Yes, okay. So did anyone have any questions regarding when we were in the multi-channel, omni-channel slide about the differences between those? Was that pretty clear, or does everyone see a distinction? And if you're at your computer and able to comment, can you say right now if you're in a multi-channel or omni-channel space? Okay, so multi-channel, okay, thank you. Okay. All right, so I apologize that this is a little bit blurry. This is a matrix that I've pulled from an article called Redefine the Omnichannel Approach, Focus on What Truly Matters. And okay, so we've got a couple that, we've got one that says they're an omni-channel. So that's interesting. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about that if you don't mind sharing as we go through. But so basically they have this matrix is put together with the idea that let's really look at the different types of customer journey. And then let's determine which ones might make the most sense for an omni-channel opportunity. All right, and so on the vertical side, it's looking at the propensity to use multiple channels. So again, when we were talking about emotional state, when people are in a highly charged emotional state, typically they pick up the phone because they want answers immediately, right? But you might have other customer journeys where they come in, they flow in from everywhere, right? So they're going to call, they're going to go to the chat, they're going to send an email. You're not 100% sure which way they're going to come in. So that could be high for them to use multiple channels. All right. And then at the bottom, on the horizontal piece, and the importance of journey to customer. So how important is that particular customer journey with regard to the outcome? So, and how is that a customer journey that most of your customers go through? So it could be that some of your customer journeys, maybe 20%, 40% will go through that particular journey on their experience with you in your organization. But there are others where maybe 80 to 95% of your customers are going to go through that journey. So if that's the case, if there's a high percentage of the customers that are going through that journey, and there's also a high propensity for them to use various channels because maybe the different segments are coming in using different channels, that's where you want to look at here. This is the top right corner, which is to build or enhance functionalities of customers' preferred channels for these journeys. The ones that fall into that box, the high and the high, are the ones you're really going to want to consider building and putting the resources into that seamless and consistent omni-channel option. So again, we have at least one person that's on the webinar today that is saying that they are omni-channel. So I would love to hear if you can do anything brief in the chat about how you determine that and what that looks like for you. And if you happen to know how many various customer journeys are being solved through your omni-channel solution, I think that would be amazing. So if you could share that, that would be good. Right? But with this in mind, one of the things that we need to do, just like I showed in a previous slide of the things that you need to think about with regard to your customer, you do need to look at becoming a customer-centric organization at your core before this is actually going to be successful. Because if you're not customer-centric at your core, that means that all the various departments and places and pieces of your organization is not operating from the same place. And if they're not operating with that customer-centric core, with the same vision in mind and desired outcome, you're not going to be able to achieve that omni-channel experience that you might be seeking, or even that a solid experience in the channels that you've chosen to offer. So again, what we want to make sure that you take away from this webinar is that omni-channel is kind of the goal, right? It's kind of the pie in the sky. That is what we're shooting for. That is what we're trying to achieve down the line. However, customers really just want to make sure that they're serviced and they're serviced well in the channels that you do offer. So that, I mean, that is the key takeaway for this. The rest of what we're talking about is as you're moving through and you're thinking about how you're going to get to that omni-channel experience, if that's something that you're desiring, that it needs to be a very deliberate process, and there needs to be the right questions asked and the right due diligence. And with that in mind, it would be first building a customer-centric culture. So there's 4 pieces that I want to focus on here. Is that customer centricity begins at the top. So your team could have the best of intentions and the desire to be driving and thinking about the customer, but if that is not owned at the C level at your organization, across the C levels, then that's not something that's going to trickle down and become part of the soul of the business. And when I think of company culture, I really do think of that as the soul of the business. And it's something that needs to be built consciously, and it needs to be something that is protected. So if you want your organization to be a customer-centric organization, it needs to be designed that way. Your daily actions and words need to support that. And then from there, that's just going to be kind of the soul of the business. And with that comes the people who can support that and drive that. And those will build those customer experiences you want, with or without that omni-channel solution. So again, customer centricity begins at the top. That's number 1. Number 2 is understand customer wants and needs by segment. So again, we've talked about this with customer segmenting. You really do need to look at where customers are coming from, how they're wired, what has brought them to you, and what their wants and needs are. And sometimes they might not even know that. And so this takes some observation on your part, and especially on the team members' part who interact with your customers daily. And this is kind of where those voice of the customer programs come in. In order to get that understanding, you need to kind of read between the lines with interactions with customers, document those, and ask your team members for their perspective on that. That's really going to give you better insight into what it is that your customers are looking for from you beyond just the transaction itself, especially when we're looking at when you're offering service to that customer. Design a customer charter and design metrics to ensure accountability. So some might know the term customer charter, some may not. A customer charter is very simple. It's basically the commitments that your organization and or your dedicated team is making to your customer. So really, it could be stating that, we'll get back to you within 24 hours. Our team members provide knowledgeable and consistent information. And you put that charter together and share it with your customers so they know what they can expect from you, but also build your metrics around those so that everyone is held accountable. And if it's a company built customer charter, I mean that everyone is accountable. And that means that whether you're billing, marketing, whether you're at C-level, everybody has something that they contribute to that service experience and to that customer commitment, whether you engage with a customer or not. So having a customer charter where you know exactly what your promises are to your customer and the metrics that your organization are designed to support that, that's going to be something that helps to build that customer-centric culture at your organization. And then also build journey-focused teams. So what do I mean by journey-focused teams? So building a journey-focused team is a team that, instead of having all the departments siloed and operating with their quote unquote piece of the business, it's really taking each of the journeys as you've broken them down that your customers have with you and ensure that that journey looks seamless across the entire business. And so building teams around that to ensure that that's seamless. Instead of having those vertical silos, if you have everything that kind of cuts across where it's horizontal and everyone's able to engage to discuss with the same goals in mind, then they're going to be able to execute that customer journey better. And this is where those omnichannel solutions are able to be built in a way that's less complicated, because you're understanding the customer's wants and needs versus guessing. You have consistent knowledge for your team members and for your customers that you're going to be able to convey through these channels, because you have a team that's dedicated to talking about these, focusing on these, and the ability to be agile in the event that maybe they missed the mark somewhere. But if you're operating in silos still, you would really struggle to be able to build that customer-centric culture and ultimately any type of omni-channel service. And with the service channels that you are offering that we want to make sure are being executed well, this is the same slide that we'd be using for that. It looks like we might have, Maria might have actually just joined us.
I am here.
Oh, hi, Maria. How are you?
Finally, I am so sorry. It was just for some reason impossible to get into the webinar after multiple tries, but I finally got in and was able to hear, some of the overview. But I think it's a very comprehensive way of describing, what are the important factors of delivering this exceptional customer service, whether you're in a multi-channel, a cross-channel, or if you believe you have omni-channel. And I love the question that you asked the participants of are you in an omni-channel? Because I'm really interested to hear the perspective from just from an overall standpoint. This first bullet point of customer centricity begins at the top. That is absolutely key from my perspective and many others' perspectives, because you need that leadership buy-in in order to really do all of the mechanics around building an omni-channel. There's a tremendous amount of investment that's required in building this omni-channel. And omni-channel in and of itself, from a definitional standpoint, starts off with a customer focus, an integration of all of your processes and integration of your systems and tools, and all of that is built around how do I deliver this best customer experience. All of that requires a tremendous amount of resource and funding. So if you don't have that support at the top, getting to this, ideal omni-channel state is tremendously difficult. And smaller companies, I think, would struggle with some of that. But to your point, if you're able to select the channels that are most used by your customers and most used by, you can segment your customers, into different groups, and you develop your either high value customer that you absolutely want to make sure you hit those channels, or you hit your broader customer base where you select the 2 or 3 channels that you get the most volume in and you get the bigger bang for your buck. That's really, kind of a better way of approaching this overall, delivering an exceptional customer experience. You can do it for most of your customers and develop good experiences in the channels that you're not connecting or integrating. So I thought, I love this slide. I think this is a great slide.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. And you know what, you actually brought up a good point, which was, you were talking about cross-channel as well. And we didn't cover that in one of the slides. Do you want to talk a little bit about cross-channel? Because we talked about multi-channel, obviously, and omni-channel, but when you say cross-channel, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a distinction in things that I've read with the multi-channel. You're really focusing on information. You want to get information out there in as many channels as you possibly can from a company perspective. There's no integration of information. It really is, you know, I am out there and I want to get into as many places as I can possibly get to. When you do the cross channel, there's some integration that takes place in cross channels, but it's like light integration. So for example, Old Navy, let's say Old Navy, for example, they could, they deliver print, you know, coupons to customers. So they have a customer base, they deliver coupons, customer gets a coupon, they can go to the store and, you know, that coupon has a code number, it's integrated potentially with, you know, some customer database. And once you purchase something, then in that instance, the customer might get, you know, an additional set of coupons or additional, you know, purchasing information, you know, and that's kind of a light, you know, integration. When I think of cross-channel, that's kind of an example where some companies will have some pieces of integration within certain channels, but they won't have them in all channels, and they won't have kind of this, you know, full-blown end-to-end personalization. You know, they would not necessarily recommend more products to you based on what you've purchased. When I think of omni-channel, I think of Amazon. And you and I have talked a little bit about this. That is the mega monster.
Yeah.
That is the one that knows all your buying patterns, understands who you are. They're in multiple products, multiple channels. They are continuing to build and grow, but they have an Amazon Web Service. They have a whole, you know, infrastructure in place to be able to not only understand the journeys, because they can track at every point that you've touched for every product that you've touched, and they know what you're buying, when you're buying, and they build a history around you. They do analytics around you. So that is a company that I think really demonstrates, you know, this whole, you know, customer centricity and in an omni-channel environment. And I think I was trying to see if I could find it. I think their mission statement was that they wanted to be the most customer-centric organization, you know, the most customer-centric organization on earth, or something like that. That's kind of their mission statement. And when you start from there, you've got the support from the top. So Amazon, I think, is a really good example of a good omni-channel.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. Actually, while you were doing that, I went ahead and looked up the corporate mission statement because I have a couple of things to add about Amazon. It says, we strive to offer our customers the lowest prices possible, the best available selection, the utmost convenience. And so that goes back to the kind of that ease of doing business piece. But one of the benefits that they have, right? So they're Amazon. Everybody's like, yeah, well, they're Amazon. Like, we get that. But think about when Amazon kind of came around, right? They started selling books, and Jeff Bezos has this vision, right? So talk about starting from the top. I mean, at all the board meetings, right? They leave an empty chair there, and that empty chair is meant to represent the customers that have a seat at the table. So they take it to the point where customers have a seat at all of their C-level meetings and their board meetings. And that's not just for show. That's really to remind everyone that the number one priority is they were customer centric. Two, they have the ability to build a lot of this stuff in-house, and they're not kind of patching together a lot of technologies. Because I would imagine that if some of you on this call have had lots of iterations of technology, maybe brought in other companies that had their own technology and their own cultures, and all of that builds on each other. And none of it's not good or bad. It's just it's just what it is, right? But that
Mhm.
does take some time and efforting to sort through, right, Maria? I know you've been through that with some of the businesses that you've worked in.
I certainly have. And I mean, Microsoft, for example, it's a mega monster company. Again, I think they struggle with omnichannel.
Mm.
And many of their systems are homegrown. Many have been also gotten through different acquisitions. So you've got this whole spaghetti bowl of, tools and systems that, Microsoft has the funding to integrate and to do all that they can and to, build their own pieces as well. So the pieces that they've built, integrated with acquisitions, integrated with partner tools, is again, a very complex environment. And it's, and I use Microsoft as an example also when you compare it to Amazon, because they're a little bit different in that the products that they're selling are slightly different, and the use is a little bit different. So Amazon has, like everything under the sun, from a product-based standpoint. Microsoft has, hardware and services. And I think of how integrated the Amazon systems are when compared to Microsoft. And I think of in Microsoft like an enterprise customer. So who, let's say, works General Dynamics, the head of a General Dynamics or Electric Boat or one of these mega companies, calls in to Microsoft because he's sitting at home and he's having trouble with his Office product on his home computer. Microsoft agent wouldn't know that this guy was an enterprise customer, because that's going to come into a whole different division, within the company, and make its service completely different than if they would have been in the office and used their enterprise customers, their enterprise support base. So, segmenting the customer is really difficult in some of these mega monster companies. And it depends on, where you're sitting, where the customer is going to be calling into. Will they use enterprise? Will they use the SMB, phone numbers? Will they use the consumer phone number to get support? Will they just chat with somebody? And the agents are all going to be different. And if they're not all connected and you know who that person really is, or they're not flagged, they're going to get potentially a different type of service.
Do you think part of that, Maria, is that as companies grow, they're just trying to react versus being able to proactively put together the experience that they're looking for? Or do you think these things just happen to bubble up unexpectedly because they didn't think that piece through all the way when they were designing something? Or is it both?
I think it's a little bit of both, because I know that there are, experienced design strategists in the larger companies, who are building and planning and understand the whole pieces of, building the journeys and all of this stuff. But, I think it's, it's a little bit of both in those larger environments. So I'm trying to think, Christine, if you rephrase that question a bit for me, and help me better understand, if you're getting at the strategic planning pieces of it, or if you're getting at the journey pieces of it.
I think I'm really getting more at the strategic planning pieces of it, and whether in a lot of organizations, most of us fall into that reactive piece, even if we've got because you're saying, Microsoft has that strategic planning team that's looking at the experience and trying to have a strategy to build out that experience in the best way possible. But I think I guess my question would be, what do you think from your experience at the organizations you've been at, could they have done differently, where maybe asking the right questions at the beginning could have maybe aided in the way that they were offering, or their ability to offer to their customers in a more seamless way?
Yeah, and I think, again, we're back to, it's a little bit of both, because you can plan for what you know and what you think is coming, but then there can be an acquisition that is going to come in 12 to 18 months, and during that time frame, with some of the larger companies, it's harder to integrate that into the whole journey. It's going to be separated for a period of time and maybe integrated down the road into the full-blown experience. So some of it you can plan for. I think in maybe smaller companies, it may be easier to integrate, because maybe the systems infrastructure isn't as crazy, and it may be one set of tools that you're using, to support your customer base. And that might make it a little bit easier. So I was thinking of which is maybe a smaller, newer group that has some integrated services. And I was thinking of the Carvana.
Oh, yes.
You can buy your car online, which used to be this whole crazy process of having to go to a store, having to look for the brand that you want, talk to the salesperson, test the car. All of that is completely different now, and that's a simplified version of here's a company that would probably have a set of tools that online chat, they have the phone support if you need it, but you're basically doing most of your purchasing online. And that experience, if there was something else that they wanted to integrate into that, might be relatively straightforward.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because it's kind of not that this is in the same light of what we're talking about, but it kind of flipped that business model on its head. And I think that is one of the things that when you sit down and we're looking at, building this customer-centric culture, actually looking at some of the ways you as a customer spend your money and what you prefer. But like, you might say, oh, so this would go back to the Pike's Place fish market, right? Like we've heard, a lot of us have heard about the book Fish. People know that they have to play, be there, the 4 different principles of the fish and the fish story. And people are like, well, I can't replicate that because that's not what I do. But their point in that story is you can do something similar. You just have to make it your own at your business. So I think that as a customer, if you look at what it is that you like about other businesses, just because you say, well, we're not that business, we can't do that, you could look at it like, okay, maybe we can't do that exact thing, but what is it that we can do that's going to make us world-class, that's going to make us different? And that was one of the things that I really took away from the fish video, which was, you're going to do something different if you're trying to be world-class at it than if you're just doing a job. So I think that if you see something that's working for you in a service channel that maybe you experience as a customer, it gives you this freedom to kind of play with it in your own business a little bit to see if it's something that might be worth offering or integrating into what you're doing. And does that make sense to you, Maria? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think it makes perfect sense. But it's also tied to, you as a customer, have your journeys that you go through, and identifying those pain points that you see, are also opportunities for you to look at, how can I do this better? How does this relate to what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis in my company? Do I do similar things? And, what are the things that we can do to improve that experience in that particular area or channel?
Yeah, that's great. Now I know this is working a little bit backwards, but Maria, since we didn't get to do an intro with you, for those who are listening, can you give a little bit of context and background about you?
Sure. Again, apologies for being late. My name is Maria Martinez, and I am a retired business operations and customer experience leader. I have worked 20 years in the healthcare arena, managing membership administration and benefits organizations for a company called Cigna. And I've also done an additional 20 years in the tech arena, leading global customer support teams for HP, Nokia, and Microsoft. I retired from Microsoft in 2017, have been consulting since then, working closely with Christine and CSIA, also doing International Service Excellence Awards judging, which has been great fun. And, also in my spare time, doing some community work and public service work. So that is a little bit about who I am.
Thank you, Maria. I appreciate that.
Christine laughs because every time we chat, I'm doing something different, and she's like, "Retirement is a very busy space for you."
It is. It's not my vision of what retirement would look like, but I also don't like to not do, right? So it could be a very close picture to what my retirement could look like. I don't know. But thank you for sharing that background. So I hope that this made sense, this conversation. I'm glad, Maria, you were able to join in and give your perspective. But what I want to do is just see if anybody listening has any questions. Could you please either pop them in the chat or the Q&A? And certainly I appreciate your patience, as I kind of got a little, just needed to kind of get things tuned up a little bit when we first started. So, but any questions today about the difference between, or the thoughts around omnichannel and offering that at your organization, and really getting clear about what is important to your customers and thinking about how best to give that to them in the channels that you currently have first, and working on that customer-centric piece and working on your customer charter. Okay, well, I don't see any questions coming through. Maria, is there anything final that you wanted to add?
No, I mean, I wish I could have participated more in the earlier part of the conversations. I think there were a lot of, interesting comments around, what do customers, from a starting point of what do customers really want, and then really understanding, the company perspective of, what do businesses want? I mean, from, customers want to interact with brands across multiple channels and use the platforms that they want. And, there's businesses that look at it from the customer-centric standpoint, and they want to meet the customer expectations, to drive their growth and loyalty and profitability. And those customers who start with that centricity piece are the ones that are more prone to look at those channels that they best deliver in, and how do I, make sure that's the greatest experience. And then there's other, really businesses that, also just they want to sell their products and services, and, deliver on growth and loyalty and profitability. But they're doing that, by trying to meet customer expectations along with shareholder expectations. So there's that whole balance of profitability versus customer expectations versus, how do I deliver best? You know, and so there are different types of business approaches, you know, to what customers really want. So that was, you know, just a thought from the early pieces of the presentation that I was hoping we could chat a little bit about. And we've got some questions now.
We do. So the first question we have is, you know, it says our company has an online portal that customers can access 24/7 to retrieve documents, place orders, and they have the ability to retrieve current and historical documents. Would we consider that multi-channel or omni-channel? What do you think, Maria?
That is more of a multi-channel, even though it might be cross-channel because there's information there. But the question is really around how integrated is that information? How accessible is it? And, you know, how do you use that for personalization that would make it more omni-channel, I would think.
Yeah. No, and I agree with that. So it's good that they have that ability to access everything, and that from a customer standpoint, that's phenomenal. I guess the question would be, yeah, internally, how do you use that information to either proactively determine things that you can do to assist that client? So maybe they've looked at these historical documents, or you can see that they're going in there. Do they have some kind of question? Is that something that you're being alerted to, where you can reach out and say, hey, I can see that you're looking through some of the documents, and maybe there's some things that you're seeking specifically. Is there anything that I can do to help answer that for you? So really with that omni-channel, it's looking at that customized solution for that. So not just the ability to have the information, but like what you're doing with it to make that experience even richer for the customer. So I agree. I think kind of a cross-channel there, Maria.
And again, a lot of companies are automating some of those responses. So, you know, within that omni-channel, the whole point is it's effortless. Yes. And you're really utilizing the agent more so for things that just cannot be responded to. Or if that's the preference of the consumer to use the voice channel. But a lot of it is around data analytics and personalization and integrating all of your your customer data and being able to use it to personalize the experience.
Absolutely. Let's see, we did have a question about what channels Carvana is using. They're asking because it will enable them to distinguish between the channels.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on Carvana. I know that it was a new way of solving for customer expectation to not have to go into the dealerships and sit 4 hours with the auto sales guy. But I think it's easy to look up the channels that Carvana has and be able to identify pretty readily. I know that they, you can look up on your device, on your phone device, you can look them up on the web. They're certainly online. They do have a chat capability in there. But beyond that, I don't know what else they do have.
Agree. Yeah, same. All right. Any other questions? I've answered a couple privately, and then, yeah, I think I've got everything. Yeah, I think we're good. So Maria, thank you so much. I hope you all found this webinar valuable. And if you have any questions, please let me know. If you would like a copy of this webinar, also please let me know. You just send me an email to christine.churchill@serviceinstitute.com. We can get that recording out to you. Additionally, we will probably have this webinar posted potentially on our YouTube channel in the next week or so. So that's an opportunity as well. If there's anything that you would want to share with any of your team members, by all means, please feel free to do that. But again, thank you all for your time. And Maria, thank you so much for joining. I think you definitely helped enrich the conversation quite a bit.
Well, thank you so much. It was my pleasure. A lot of fun.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, Maria. Okay, I think we are